What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and tonight I've got some football focus. The Pittsburgh Steelers just finished their primetime Sunday Night Football matchup in Week 3 of the 2023 NFL season with the Las Vegas Raiders, Pittsburgh traveling to Vegas. Anytime Pittsburgh ever travels to the Raiders, whether it be Oakland or Vegas, we know we're usually in for a rough trip. Pittsburgh almost always loses those games, no matter how bad the Raiders as a team are. Coming off of Week 1 drubbing and then a pretty rough game last week, carried by the defense entirely, we had a lot of concern. And then earlier today, in spite of addressing all of the Fire Canada chants from last week, Pittsburgh has announced they promoted Matt Canada to give him one-on-one time with Pickett to work with him daily and try and be the one to improve Pickett. So the crowd chants Fire Canada. Tomlin says, hold my beer. What did you guys say? Promote Canada? Is that what you chanted? And Pittsburgh does the exact opposite and promotes Matt Canada. So Pittsburgh came in with reason to be concerned, especially, again, traveling to Vegas to play the Raiders in prime time. That can usually mean trouble for us. This was a much better game, a much more well-rounded game for us, and a much better game in terms of both running and passing the ball. The offense in every phase looked slightly better than it has in the past 2 weeks. That's not saying much because the offense has been one of the worst units in the NFL in the past 2 weeks. I want to apologize immediately. If I sound like crap, I'm very sick. I'm going to try and be a little faster on this review tonight. I don't feel very well. It's a random flu. It's not COVID or anything. It's just a flu. But I'm going to try and record this one quickly and get some medicine and get to bed. But I am proud to announce that Pittsburgh survives this game 23-18 to get the win. We start off with some back-to-back 3-and-outs. We go 3-and-out twice. They go 3-and-out once. Defense starts out looking solid. Right away, second drive for the Raiders, they come down and start picking us apart with Davante Adams and Jacoby Myers. Davante in particular had a crazy game. Now, we know Davante is one of the top 3 receivers in the entire NFL, but he was picking apart our secondary. We've had problems in the first 2 weeks covering. Brandon Ayuk gave us fits in Week 1. In Week 2, it was Amari Cooper that gave us fits. In Week 3, it was Myers and Davante Adams, but especially Adams. Adams, I think, had, 15 catches for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Myers, the second receiver, had 7 catches for about 85 yards. That was our biggest weak spot today by far. We had a hard time covering those 2 guys. That being said, Pittsburgh allows a touchdown drive where Davante Adams scores, and they don't allow any points again after that second drive until mid-fourth quarter when the Vegas comes back. I'm going to call them Oakland a lot. Vegas comes back, scores a touchdown after a bogus penalty called on us. A sack by Minkah Fitzpatrick is called a helmet-to-helmet when it's not because the helmets grazed each other. And then Vegas scores, gets the 2-point conversion, and all of a sudden the game is an 8-point game because Pittsburgh offense was getting mostly field goals instead of touchdowns. So all of a sudden, this 7-point defensive performance winds up being a very close game that comes down to us having to run the clock out on offense in the very last possession, which, unlike last week against Cleveland, we did much better this week. Let's get into the actual numbers, and we'll talk about the sides of the ball. Kenny Pickett, by far his best day of the year so far. 16 of 28, 235 yards, 2 touchdown passes, no picks. That looks pretty good. I will say there was one pass that was thrown to the outside to the Raiders veteran corner. I forget his name right now. It was a miscommunication between Pickett and Connor Hayward. Connor ran inside, Pickett threw outside. The corner jumped the route, dropped the ball. He had an easy pick 6, so that could have been 6 points the other way, which would have been the difference in the game. So that could have been a pick from Pickett that could have been really bad. But other than that, no really, really bad balls thrown today. Pickett still was erratic. He still missed some. There was a couple on the outside he had, once with Pickens, once with Calvin Austin on the outside. Couple guys he could have had that he missed, but he wasn't nearly as erratic. He wasn't throwing across the middle nearly as much late. He wasn't looking as bouncy on his feet. He was using his feet to run a little more this week and get some plays to the outside. They moved the pocket, both to the benefit of Pickett and Matt Canada. They called some plays to shift the pocket. They used a lot more motion this week than they had been using in previous weeks. They did use Connor Hayward a bit at fullback, so we're seeing slightly improved formations, slightly improved designs on this offense this week. Rushing the ball was also slightly better. Najee Harris, 19 carries for 65 yards. Jaylen Warren, 8 carries for 29 yards. Now, that's not amazing. Najee, I think, was 3.4. Warren was 3.6, I believe. That's not great, but at least we're seeing Najee falling forward. He's finding very small holes and falling forward. Warren is getting kind of the same sized holes, but at least is hitting them so quick. He's much faster than Najee. But Najee using his power to finish runs strong, and Warren using his speed to find really small holes and make them work. Pittsburgh did run a gap set where they were running between the center and guard on either side in this offense, and I like the way they were creating small holes between Cole and Seumalo and Daniels. I will say Mason Cole has not played the best in the first 2 weeks of the season for the offensive line. He's not been quite as bad as Chooks or Dan Moore, but he's been pretty bad. He played a bad first quarter tonight and then got a little better. The offensive line overall wasn't terrible. They weren't great tonight, but they weren't allowing a ton of sacks, especially considering Max Crosby for the Raiders is an absolute monster and played very well tonight. But that being said, Dan Moore did not get blown out of the water the way I expected him to and the way that he has in the first 2 weeks. Jaylen Warren also added 3 catches for 23 yards. Like I said, small incremental changes, but at least 3.5 yards per carry is not as bad as the 2 we've been getting. So it's something. Again, Jaylen Warren getting a couple nice screen plays. They're getting him in open field, which is nice. And Najee looked a lot stronger in some small runs, taking little 1-yard runs and turning them into 4 or 5-yard runs. So I like, compared to the first 2 weeks at least, I see improvements in the run game. Receiving, George Pickens, 4 catches for 75 yards. Still get that guy more targets. That's not enough targets, but he played well tonight. Calvin Austin only had 2 catches, but one of them was a 71-yard touchdown down the field. Beat a corner and a safety, just streaking down the middle. Beautiful play. Getting himself open like nobody else can, catching and running. Calvin Austin is electric. I want to see more deep shots down the field to Calvin Austin. He's an underrated combat catcher, and he's very fast. Get that guy more targets. Speaking of get that guy more targets, Pat Freiermuth finally gets some targets tonight. 3 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown. Again, that's 3 catches is not a ton, but they targeted him this time in the middle of the field. They were using him as a middle of the field option, a second and long option to get on shorter third downs, a third down conversion option, one of which he got in the middle of the field, one of which he went for about a 16 or so yard touchdown from inside to outside, and one thrown in the middle of the field on a third down that he had in his hands and got knocked away by a good defensive play. So Pat at least getting more targets. So again, we're seeing Pickett running the ball a little more for first downs, moving the pocket and using his feet to get away from sacks. We're seeing Pickens get a few more targets in the middle of the field and run some more routes, which he's starting to do pretty well. He's not getting a ton of separation, but he's getting enough for his strong hands to make catches. Again, Calvin Austin with the deep shot, pushing the ball a little more vertically. I like that. Pat Freiermuth getting more targets. Again, these things are still not being done enough yet, but compared to the first 2 weeks, I'm very happy with seeing them take notes and seeing them improve. So I'm liking where that is going. Again, the offensive line wasn't great today, but they weren't terrible. All phases of the offense are slightly improved. But also, playing a bad Raiders team and still not where they need to be yet. So don't get too complacent just yet. But improvements nonetheless. Defensively, TJ Watt, 2 more sacks. It's a day that ends in Y, folks. TJ Watt's going to get sacks. He's phenomenal. He affected many plays tonight. He's very much like a Max Crosby. I think a little better. TJ Watt, 2 more sacks to add to the trophy case, the all-time leading sack leader in Pittsburgh. 2 other sacks today as well, 4 total. We get one from Marcus Golden, who's got 2 sacks already in the last 3 games. He's been very effective as our number 3 pass rusher on the outside. And Keanu Benton gets his first NFL sack. I think it's his first one, right? I'm pretty sure. He dominated somebody. He pushed over that center, bowled him out of the way, and just ran Garoppolo over, and then came back on the very next play and drew a holding call because he got to the quarterback again. Had another play where he was right in there on, I think it was on the golden sack. So Keanu Benton wasn't getting in a ton early on in the game. A couple nice pressures from the other nose tackle. But Benton started getting in and making plays immediately. He's an impact guy. I don't see him getting on the field enough, but when he does, he makes it happen. Again, I made a note last week about Benton and JPJ needing to play more. Both played a little more this week, and both played well. Positive for Benton on the sack and the penalty he drew. JPJ got a few plays out there and a few nice plays where the guy didn't catch the ball. He's being thrown out on third down. He is still a little handsy. He's still a little touchy. We got to be careful of holding calls. But I like the way he played overall today. He got beat on one play, but for the most part, I think he's been overall, by and large, our most solid corner so far this season with his brief play. But again, we did get some plays out of the corners tonight too. So good to see JPJ and Benton playing a little more. They're playing pretty well. Good ball so far. Minka Fitzpatrick, 8 tackles. Had a sack that was called back on a bad penalty. They called helmet to helmet. He barely touched him. I don't like that at all. Still 8 tackles flying all over the place. Big positive there. Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson had 2 special teams tackles tonight. He played really well with some ferocity. Came in and was playing a little more in the run game this week. They played him at linebacker on defense a little more than they have so far this season. He got some reps, and he was in there on 2 tackles on defense. So I like what Mark Robinson did tonight. He didn't get a ton of playing time, but when he did, he made the most of it. I like that. Also, I got to say, the linebacker in coverage tonight, 45. Why am I losing his name right now for some reason? I'm going to blame my sick brain. Cannot think of the former Jets linebacker that played on the Jets last year. Best coverage linebacker. Played pretty good in coverage tonight. The Raiders did use the middle of the field quite a bit. That was a big strong point for them, like I said, with the receivers. But overall, I thought that the linebacker coverage was pretty tight on the guys, and several times Josh Jacobs was used for like short passes, and the tackling was there from 45. Also, Cole Holcomb played pretty solid in coverage tonight. Going to give Holcomb, with 5 tackles and some pretty good coverage plays, a positive in this game as well. So pretty good linebacker plays compared to last week. Something else that I called for. They still need to get more tackles in the backfield and some more like forced fumbles and splash plays. But in the last 2 weeks, Holcomb has looked a little better, as has our linebacker coverage overall. Corner coverage, again, I don't like for the most part what Peterson and Wallace have been doing. They've been getting really torched again 3 weeks in a row. They played 3 really good receivers, but now it's the NFL. Every team has at least one, if not multiple, great receivers now. So every single week we're seeing a receiver get 140, 150, 170 yards on us. When you have 2 receivers getting 240 yards combined on us and 2 touchdowns, that's not great. So I think Peterson and Wallace both still need a lot of work. Wallace, again, is not really fitting our scheme very well. He's been getting torched a whole lot, and Peterson has looked a bit lost out there for being someone who's a veteran who's so, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's such a leader. He's such a good player. I haven't seen him look all that great. That being said, combined, they got 3 picks tonight. We got 3 interceptions. Levi Wallace jumped a tight end route on a good play where Watt had some pressure on Garoppolo, jumped the route nicely and picked off the tight end. Wallace also got the game-sealing pick at the end when the Raiders were driving to try to get a win. That Garoppolo tossed the ball up, and Wallace played back and got a nice jumping interception at the end, touched his feet. That was really nice. And Peterson also took an overthrow. It was a double-team play that they were trying to force the ball in, I think it was to Devontae Adams, where Peterson read it nicely and got a pick. So again, they're making positive plays. Just like every week, they're going to get a couple deflections, few positive plays. Wallace had 2 nice deflections and 2 picks this week. Peterson had 1 nice deflection and a pick this week. They're still making positive plays. They're still veterans. They're still intelligent. They're still physical. There's still a lot to like about their game. But I think, again, too many wide receivers are using slants and using comebacks and using some basic routes that are really torching us. So I don't know if there's a way we can minimize that, but I think all in all, Porter in his brief runs has done more physical-wise to kind of combat those things than Wallace and Peterson. Now, I'm not saying JPJ in 3 games is better than Wallace or especially Peterson, my God, but Wallace and Peterson have struggled overall, but I'm very happy to see them playing physical, getting a few breakups, and getting those picks. Those turnovers are helping us a lot, especially in tight games. Pittsburgh was very efficient tonight. Short pass game worked well. Again, targeting Muth, targeting Pickens more, taking the deep shot, using the run game, calling plays a little smarter. I'm going to give Canada credit. He's not getting a positive in this game, but compared to the first 2 weeks, he looks like a genius this time. We also managed to get a couple nice runs from Kenny and close out the game with a nice read at the end of the game to Allen Robinson, who got a few catches to catch the ball, get down in bounds, and run the clock out. So Pittsburgh winds up surviving this game. Should have won it much more dominantly. Couple of bad penalties called toward the end. There was a iffy kind of a holding call in the end zone on Sullivan, could go either way. Again, the bad call on Minkah Fitzpatrick kept the Raiders in it. They were still fighting, especially with those two wide receivers. Jacobs got a couple nice runs toward the end. The defense got a little tired when Vegas picked the pace up. Sorry for the Oakland thing. Vegas picked the pace up and got a little better. But overall, 23-18, the score is much more dominant than Pittsburgh would have you believe. We dominated most of this game. Defense was lights out after the second drive for pretty much the entire game until mid-fourth quarter, and then it was way too close. So Pittsburgh still needs to close out a little stronger and can still get better at everything. But like I said, improved blocking, Pickett's eyes downfield, Pickett running more shots to Pickens, better use of Freiermuth, slightly better run game, and better interior blocking for us. Defensively, we're getting sacks. The guys are getting picks. The guys are getting more physical on third downs and getting off the field. Also want to give shout-out special teams-wise. Chris Boswell, 3 for 3, including a 57-yard field goal. Not sure if that's an all-time for him, but he's been on fire all year. He's kicking 50-yarders. He had 2 last week, a 57-yarder this week, 3 for 3. He's been great. Presley Harvin, also big game again. 6 punts, 323 yards. That is a 53.8 average. 3 of his 6 punts down inside the 20. 1 was a 62-yard banger. So Harvin, he had 1 bad punt out of those 6. The other 5 were good. The closing one was really good. So Presley Harvin, again, big plus. After a bad game in game 1, he has had back-to-back bangers. 2 big, great games in a row for him. So you can't be upset with having Boswell and Harvin playing lights out with Mark Robinson making tackles, Killebrew making tackles and special teams. Overall, this team looks much improved. Again, they go in prime time. They go on the road. They travel to Vegas where they usually lose. Amidst all the Canada stuff, they come out looking much better than they have before. Still got to close out stronger, but Pittsburgh gets the win. Goes to 2-1 now, tied for the division lead with a win over Cleveland from last week. So we're looking a lot better after these last 2 games than we did in week 1. And now all of a sudden we're trending upwards. So what do you guys think? Who stood out to you in this game? Who do you want to see more from? Who needs to get more involved? Who needs to improve? What do you think of the improvements we've made this week? Please tell me in the comments below. I want to talk to you guys and hear your thoughts. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to go to bed. I apologize for this voice. I'm going to take some medicine and get knocked out, but go Steelers, and I will see you guys next week with hopefully more than one video. Take care. Go Steelers.